Hello everybody, my name is William. Welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Today we are doing our return flight from Ronan to Lincoln in Montana, flying our BN2 Islander for an FSECONOmy flight, carrying some passengers on back for service to Lincoln. I hope you all do enjoy the flight. If you do, make sure to give the video a like, consider subscribing if you want to see more content. As always, let's get into it. Welcome on board the Islander, everybody. We're on the ramp here at Ronan. We're going to be doing a flight back to Lincoln, carrying some passengers on back. No cargo this time around. It is a little bit later in the day from our flight that we did up here to Ronan, but we do have some passengers paying their way back, so we're going to go ahead and get the aircraft ready to start up. Going to make sure we put that throttle up a little bit so we don't have it die on us like we did whenever we were landing here. Go ahead and open up both tanks and get the valves open as well. Now then we're going to come down, flip the battery on and the beacon on. So you got to have that beacon going before you start up an engine. We will do, let's see, we're actually going to go for the left side first just because I noticed the fuel pressure seemed, for some reason, it seemed to come up after we started the left engine. So I just want to try that. We're going to make sure it is clear on the left side, so we are good to go. Let's go ahead and start that left engine. Alright, left engine is started. We immediately have fuel pressure, so I think that might have been maybe something tied to starting up the left engine. But left engine is going, oil pressure looks good. Temperatures are going to come up. We do have a little bit of power in, so hopefully it will not die on us. Let's go ahead and get that left generator on. And then we're going to come up and do the same for the right hand side. So right mags on, we'll go ahead and come over and click the fuel pump for the right hand side. Make sure it is clear. We got trucks and whatnot going on over there, but you should at least understand we're about to start this engine up. So looks like it is started up. We'll just make sure fuel pressure, oil pressure, and temperatures will come up. Let's go ahead and get that generator on as well. Now then we can get our avionics master on, and we can close the guard for that and click our fuel pumps off. Let's try that this time for our flight. So the fuel pumps are off on both engines. Everything else looks like it is good. I'm going to go through, get the aircraft set up. It's already in our GPS for us to go back to Lincoln, just about 70 nautical miles. We'll be departing runway 34 out of here, which is the runway we landed. It'll be a little bit of a crosswind, but we'll at least have a slight headwind component for us using runway 34, and the wind looks calm at Lincoln. So go through, I'm going to get the aircraft set up, and we'll be ready to taxi and depart in just a moment. Alright, I think I am ready to start our taxi, so we're going to give it a little bit of power. We got our parking brake off. Our flight is started in FSECONOmy as well. Like I said, we're just carrying passengers back this time. No cargo going with us, so a little bit less payout, but it is what it is. We're going to do return service. It's enough for the aircraft. Definitely it's going to be a profitable flight on the way back for a short hop as well. We're going to fly south once again and kind of work our way around the mountains. Same kind of thing we did on the way up here. Once we get to where we're holding short of runway 34, we'll go ahead and make sure we've got everything else set up on the aircraft. But the first thing we are going to do is put our flaps into the takeoff position so we are configured for our departure. This is something, one of the things with having to keep a little bit of throttle in, we just need to make sure we don't get going too fast on our taxi. We are doing about 15 knots, which is a little bit quick. That's something my instructor used to kind of get on to me about when we were flying the 172. I wanted to keep the throttle at about 1,000 RPM in the 172, and that way everything would kind of warm up and whatnot. But then whenever we would start taxiing, he didn't want, you know, like riding the brakes, obviously. You're just kind of wearing them while you're working your way down to a runway, especially if you got a really long taxi. Which I guess I just at the time I didn't quite understand that as After the airplane warms up a little bit, you can kind of throttle it back. It's always something whenever I was first kind of getting into that aircraft. Didn't quite have that issue in the 152 for whatever reason, but anyways, we are about holding short now. There is the line. Always want to make sure you stop before the line. Good rule of thumb is to make sure you can still see it out of your windows, and that will set you up to not cross it and get into any kind of trouble because of it. We've got our taxi light on, so let's go ahead and put that to landing light. We'll go nav light on, strobe light on, and we'll put the lights on to pulse. Our pitot and stall heat is on. It looks like it is clear. Off. We'll just make sure, and we cannot see much behind us, but we will just kind of visually clear it as we come back around. So let's go ahead and take runway tree 4, and we will start to get ready for our departure. Last thing is put the transponder into altitude mode. It is indeed clear, so we are taking the runway now. Runway tree 4. Wind's going to be coming out of the left a little bit, so we will have to contend with that just slightly. Let's go ahead and get on the power. It is spooled up. Everything looks like it is good, so right rudder. Not doing a great job of keeping center line, but there we are before the 1,000-foot markers. We are up and airborne. We want to keep this thing below 88 knots. Around 75 knots seem to be a good speed to kind of climb out at whenever you got those takeoff flaps down. And then we can quickly build up some altitude, get us up above the ground nice and fast. And then whenever we are ready, we've got a decent amount of altitude between us and the ground. We can go ahead and get those flaps in. Our climb rate kind of drops off just a little bit, and then our airspeed starts to pick back up, and we start climbing pretty fast once again. We're going to do a right-hand turn down to the south. Basically about a heading of 170, I think, will work nicely for us. So we're just going to do our right 180, take us down to about 170, and we're going to fly parallel these mountains. Once again, kind of work our way that direction before we start heading back direct to Lincoln. And since we are going off to the southeast for this one, we can cruise at a odd altitude, take us up to 9,500, which will be just a little bit safer, or we could do 7,500 and get nice and close to the ground, but I don't think we quite want to do that. I think we'll actually go ahead and level it out here at go wings level around 160 or so. Kind of leveling it right there, climbing out. It's about 100 knots indicated, somewhere around that. Want to try and set this heading bug if I can. It's not the easiest. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. It's not the easiest. You wind up zooming with how small the area is for you to be on the clickable zone or the actionable zone for the knob. But either way, it's good enough. We have it set. We're continuing to climb out. We're almost up to 7,000 feet. This thing climbs really well, even kind of up at this altitude. Haven't taken it much higher, but getting in and out of airstrips around, 4,000, 5,000 feet in elevation, not an issue. I think you could definitely get it up to airfields a little bit higher than that, it still wouldn't cause any kind of problems for you. Since we are at a bit of altitude, we want to go ahead and pull that mixture back. And you can see this fuel flow as we pull it back. It's going to take a dip here in a second. Wait for it. There it goes. So you see it dip. Generally, I would always do a little bit rich of where that dip is. I believe if you go just rich of that, that's for more power, and if you went a little bit lean of that, that's for a little bit better economy. I might have that flipped, but that's generally, that dip is kind of what you're looking for in those whenever you're doing your mixture based off of that. So once again, we're climbing out, and we are just keeping it hand flying for the moment. And once we kind of establish ourselves at the altitude we want, that's when we're going to go ahead and get the autopilot up and going. It just reacts better, in my opinion, whenever we kind of do that. We fly the plane and get it established, and then let the autopilot take over and manage the aircraft from there. So as we're about 9,200 feet, I'm going to start trimming the nose down just a little bit, so we can kind of smooth out this transition, hopefully. That was a lot of trim there. But as our airspeed's going to increase, as we're leveling, we still got a high power setting, so we can get up to good cruise speed. We're going to need more and more trim down on the nose. We want to get this kind of established before we go ahead and put it on the autopilot. So let's just keep on going. And what you could do at this point is you could get it established the way you want, and try and get the vertical speed near 0, and just go ahead and activate the autopilot, since it's going to activate a roll mode and I think a pitch mode as well. Come over quickly and activate the altitude. If you're off altitude a little bit, just click it one more time, puts it into a vertical speed mode, and you can just tell it that you want to go down and capture 9,500, which it should be doing now. I can go ahead and activate the heading mode, since we got our bug set on the heading we want, and go about making sure the aircraft is a little bit more suited for cruise. About 151 knots at the moment, so that's either from going up in elevation just a little bit, or we got a little bit of tailwind to help us out, showing 25 minutes if we were going to go direct. But we've already talked about that. We're not. We are paralleling these mountains here off our left wing, and we're going to shoot the gap in between these two ranges to get us on our way to Ronin. This has been a really enjoyable plane to fly. There's a lot of locations. I think this thing would be a lot of fun to fly. Obviously, little islands, the Caribbean, Bahamas, stuff like that would be a blast. As well as the little islands off of the UK. There's also some little islands off of Africa. As long as there's a decent number of airports in there, it'd be really fun. French Polynesian islands. Areas like that, I think this thing would be an absolute blast. You never really have to worry about the airfield you're going into. You pretty much know it can handle it. It's just whether or not you want to put up with the en route time to get there. Would be really pretty to go up into. Nice pretty mountains off the left wing. We're basically at the altitude of them too. So here at about 9,500 feet. You can kind of see the peaks and just see over them just a little bit. Or past them, I guess. Not really over them, but past them. We are going to start making our way to the east now. So we're going to bring our heading bug on over. about, I think that's about 140 on there. We really just want to start cheating our way off to the east if we want to make this as quick as we could without climbing over the mountains, which we definitely could have if we wanted to. But doing it this way, just making sure we kind of shoot that gap and then head direct back into Lincoln. Our passengers on the flight back kind of get the same views that the ones on the way up got. Not bad on the flight time either. We're getting a little bit of help definitely with that wind, so and there's that chop, so it is still a little bit bumpy out. Just later on in the day. The weather hasn't changed much at all in the area, and I'm not going to complain about that. These mountains make this area a lot scarier if you are if you're dealing with having to fly into clouds at all, low visibility, any kind of situation like that. Definitely would make this area a lot more treacherous. So I'm going to go ahead and progress down to the gap, shoot back over to the east, and then head on into Ronan. But I think for now, for you guys, we will just enjoy the views outside. It is a really pretty mountain range off to our left side. It's nice to actually take in the views from a little bit more altitude. And the range off our right side, we're in the same kind of pass we were in on the flight up here. I just went ahead and went and did a redirect to Lincoln. So now we can, we've got our CDI selected. You got to make sure it's on GPS. Otherwise, it defaults to the Nav1 radio. So it was on GPS. We're putting it back on GPS, and now we can hook up to Nav mode, and it is going to take us directly into Lincoln from there. Cut down our trip just a little bit. Go ahead and make sure that we are flying the straight path there. It's about 47 nautical miles from us now. We are doing almost 155 across the ground. That's pretty good speed. In all honesty, not bad at all. We're showing 18 minutes from the field. Lincoln is up a little bit higher than Ronan was, so it's about 4,600 feet or so, which is going to mean, regardless, we're going to have about a 5,000 foot descent on down all the way to field elevation from our present altitude. So we're just going to keep that in mind, but we're going to chug along, knock down probably another 10 minutes or so before we start planning our way down. It's really not hard to kind of get this thing to bleed some airspeed, and you can do it, set yourself up on a pretty short final, and get those flaps out once you're down below the 88 knots that it I believe it says right there, yeah, flap extend speed 88 knots. Once you get those flaps out, it is you actually gonna have quite a bit of power in to kind of get it to maintain its speed. So we're gonna enjoy the views one more time, and then we will be ready to start our approach and land into Lincoln. Check in one more time before we start our descent and approach into Lincoln. It's a really pretty area, I will say. I'm really enjoying this part of Montana. We got a lot of mountains up around, and then it kind of opens up into these nice little flat areas. We've got some airports to check out for sure in the area. And once again, the good luck with the weather is holding out. We can see all kinds of clouds around us, but they do seem higher up, I will say, but none basically on the route of our flight. So that is both the first trip to Ronan and the return trip to Lincoln. We are lucking out with the weather. I wouldn't be as worried about it in the Islander here. Had really good luck with the weather in the X Cub as well. And that's the one I think really I don't want to be flying in too terrible weather, especially the airstrips we're likely to be going into in that thing. But nevertheless, we are cruising along. We're about 16 miles out now. We're going to be starting our descent a little bit late because we got to get over this terrain directly in front of us, and we're going to make a pretty rapid descent down into Lincoln, where our runways available are runway 22 and 4. I think we're going to shoot for runway 4 today. I'll go ahead and set that up on the heading bug just so it is a good marker. We took off on runway 22, so it just makes a little bit more sense. The wind was calm for us to come in on runway 4, but we should be ready to start our descent and approach into Lincoln here momentarily. Just crossing over the top of this terrain, so we can start making our way down. Like I said, the field elevation here is about 4,600 feet, so we're just going to set it to 5,500 feet, press altitude again to engage the vertical speed mode, and we're going to start down at about 1,000 feet a minute. We are going to pull the power on back so we do not pick up any more airspeed as we start our descent down. You can kind of see just along the top of my mouse there, I believe this is our airstrip. It's about 6 miles out. Like I said, we're going to use runway 04 for our landing, which should be this side over here. So once we get a little bit closer in, what I'm going to do is basically just kind of cheat ourselves over a little bit to the right so we can kind of set up for a base to final for runway 04. And I think what we're going to do actually is we're going to increase this descent just a little bit more. We're going to go to about 1,400 feet per minute, and we're going to pull that throttle on back quite a bit more. Let's go ahead and bring the mixture up as well since we are descending on down. We've got our lights and everything situated. We might be making a bit of a steep approach there just because I didn't want to really start our descent until we were well clear of that terrain, but it shouldn't be much of an issue for us to get this thing under control and on a decently stabilized final. So we're going to go ahead and disengage the autopilot and head on to the right just a little bit. What we're going to do is set that 040 on about the 90 for our heading indicator there, so that would indicate about 90 degrees from our current heading. It's basically taking us towards this nice big bit of agricultural land out there. We're just going to keep on coming down, pull that power out even more, crossing right over the town. See Main Street down there. Basically everything on it. Nice little small town USA right there. We might be a little bit too high to actually start this approach in, which would not be an issue at all. What we can do is we could do a 360 if needed, but I think we're going to try to kind of just elongate this a little bit, and we're going to make a bit of an S-turn kind of built into our turn to final. I need to get a little bit more trim up, and as we come into that white arc, we're not going to mess around. We're going to go straight down to landing flaps. So really, for I guess the proper way to do an S-turn would have been to turn final and then start doing the S-turn. We also could have done a side slip if we wanted to. It would have been probably extremely efficient in the Islander. Just haven't done one yet, so you see, all we're really doing by kind of shooting out a little bit further than that would be making it to where we have to cover more distance, so we have more time to do our descent. And that definitely was not a proper way to do it, but the concept is kind of the same either way. So we are on short final for runway 04 here, right around 60 knots. This speed I kind of like to settle on. I'm coming in a bit steep, but it was, once we got our flaps out, like I said, this thing is pretty easy to get under control. We're going to start leveling it out now. We're a little late on the power. The engines take some time to get up to speed. It's fine. 60 knots has a lot of headroom for just focus on the flare there. Nice landing, right rudder to keep it down on the center. And we are going to make this first turn off to the left. Make sure we keep a little bit of throttle in. Got to remember that this time, so the engines don't die on us. Just had the throttle sitting at idle because of the flare there, but we're clearing off to the left. Get our flaps in. I'll pass the hold short bars here. Make sure we go through them and bring the aircraft to a stop. What we're going to do now is just get the transponder back onto standby. We can put the lights back to taxi lights, and we can go ahead and turn off our strobe and everything else like that. Taxi onto parking where we can complete our flight. It's a really pretty area. The shorter airfields as well, it's definitely, they're plenty big enough for us here in the Islander, but it is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying flying around these different locations. I hope you all have been enjoying doing the flights with me as well. I love being able to share them with you guys, so if you do, as always, giving the video a like really does help me out. I appreciate it. But the most helpful thing you can really do is just share this with somebody else that you think might enjoy it, and kind of help expand a little bit and get more people involved. That is the most helpful, and I really do appreciate that. So thanks everyone, honestly, for all the support that you've already given me. It means a ton. We're going to go ahead and complete our flight now before I start rambling even more. So we're just setting our parking brake. That completes our flight in FS Economy. We've got our passengers back to Lincoln from Ronan. We're ready to see where we're going to go next and kind of explore a little bit more in the area and enjoy the Islander a little bit more as well. Might look into renting one in some of the more kind of classic locations for an Islander to operate. And see if we can get into some kind of different kind of flying. But this is my Islander, and this is kind of where it is, so I might as well take advantage of it and kind of explore Montana anyways, as that is an area that really interests me. So hope you guys have enjoyed the flying, and until next time, bye bye.